The script was incredible and so visual. I felt like I could see the whole thing kind of playing out as I was reading it.
I could totally see how this story and its characters would lean so much towards Robert's work as a director.
I was such a fan of Rob's movies going into this. I just really wanted to do justice to him and his vision for this movie, because it's something that he's wanted to make since he was 8 years old.
Open the door with urgency, even though you're cheating coming out. This story's been with me for so long, and I've been thinking about how to do it and how to make it my own for a very long time. I was thinking that both of you guys would do it.
If it is slower and we're going with it, motivated by that movement, Nosferatu was part of knowing him when I first met him. It's maybe his most personal movie.
Pull up the rug.
When I was in high school, me and a good friend did a senior-directed play of Nosferatu. And then a local theater impresario saw this play and invited me to do the play in a more professional setting, and this kind of changed my life. It enforced the fact that I wanted to be a director. And then it's been many years of trying to get this made as a film.
At last.
Our intention is to make something that is both like gothic and romantic, but actually truly like a scary, dread-filled horror movie. You're trying to keep it like slightly consistent with Orlok. The vampires evolved from Lord Riven to Dracula, the sad vampire, the sparkling vampire, the vampire who's the hero, and we wanted to make a vampire scary again.
3, 2, 1, action.
Not by the grace of God!
All the actors really put every bit of themselves into it to make it the most dread-filled and atmospheric we possibly could.
Does evil come from within us or from beyond?
Like, each of these big statements need to be a little bit louder than the last one.
This role requires a lot of letting go and becoming something demonic and otherworldly, and I really wanted to show that I was willing to go there and that I was willing to get freaky and weird.
Lily's able to go into like an incredibly dark and an incredibly vulnerable place very quickly. We were all in tears because her audition was like so raw and so intense.
He told me how you sold me to him for gold.
No.
Our love was supposed to be sacred. You never listened!
I've been completely astounded by Lily Rose every day on the set, doing an incredible accent for this role, and she conjures up such energy and the physicality she brings to it, particularly with like kind of the possessed scenes.
She had to do this extensive body work and Butoh choreography with Marie Gabrielle Rodi, the choreographer, to do all this hysteria stuff. Butoh is a Japanese dance discipline that is very dark and scary.
Going into this hysterical, shaking, convulsing fit, Lily did a lot of work pushing that forward and really finding it in her own body. And she had to make a really strong, like, grotesque demon face to the camera, and she really went for it. She drooled, her tongue went out, her eyes were rolling, you know, she was making the most hideous faces, and I'm really proud of the work that she's done to reach that level.
Lenny! I remember being very intimidated when I first started working with her, and it was very cool. It was really cool to push my limits like that and see how far I could go.
Don't you think we should never have married? We're already dead!
She over-delivered.
For Thomas, it's the journey that he goes on. He starts out quite a naive character who expects and hopes for the best, and he kind of unravels and loses that hope.
Nothing you can say will shake me, for there is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
Nick's a tremendous actor, and he's also just the nicest guy. Because of his like genuine kindness and openness, he was able to play this character who's completely unaware of the darkness in the world, like with utter believability.
With Nick, on the day when we started shooting, it felt like we were very dialed in. It's not an easy role for him in this movie. Those scenes are so intense for Nick. He has to be in this kind of delirious, emotional state of just confusion and fear.
Bill Skarsgård is absolutely incredible as Count Orlok. He is, to me, really the only man for the job.
I've done these sort of transformative performances before, but none quite like this. I've never been more scared in playing a character than playing Orlok.
It's something that is so intimidating and fully realized and horrific that it is incredible to see and also terrifying to be around.
The amount of stamina and the amount of energy that it takes to like lower your voice and be this like supernatural creature that's incapable of imperfection is very exhausting. So I wouldn't insist Bill to be method and to stay in character. Sometimes you needed to lighten the mood, and he was able to do that and still like go back into the darkness.
Oh yeah. It's her, all right. It's her.
If we are to tame darkness, we must first face that it exists.
I have the like outrageously great fortune that one of the greatest actors of all time likes to work with me, and it's Willem Dafoe.
I adore Rob Eggers. When he asks me to do something, I'm going to do it. It makes sense that I'm right-handed and I take it off and I hand him the
Here's real leech.
Okay, you want it?
It's a little early, probably.
Okay. I knew that my role was the role that he would play if he was an actor in this thing.
It's just a better version of that. I'm not an actor.
Okay, yes, you.
No one else could give it the command and authority as he can. His ability to like walk the edge between like darkness and humor.
It's been very rewarding. Willem does bring a spark of joy to all his work, and I think that's what makes him so magnetic on screen.
You can only be better for how good the person in front of you is, and so I try to just hold on to that and be like, wow, I can't believe I'm working with Willem Dafoe. It's crazy.
For when the sun's pure light shall break upon the dawn, redemption!
Pardon us, but I am to hunt a monster.
You're a perfect child yourself. We've had a lot of fun as the Hardings. Aaron always brings this fun, sort of almost improvisational quality. He's also so attentive to detail and really questioning why these characters are doing what they're doing.
Aaron and Emma just bring so much life to those characters.
Aaron is perfect for Harding. He has the biggest character arc of anyone in the movie. Aaron's performance near the end of the film is truly heartbreaking.
When I read the script, Friedrich was instantly a relatable kind of character, someone who is a family man, someone who will go to the ends of the earth for his wife and children.
He was able to channel that and bring like real depth to this character.
Your very presence! You must just be wrong!
I'm so grateful to Emma for taking the role of Anna because it is not the largest role, and Emma is such an accomplished performer, but I do feel that Anna, like her husband Harding, does have like a more of an interesting character arc, and Emma was really able to do that. Emma had to perform with, you know, over a dozen live rats on their semi-naked body. Emma was super brave and super cool about it. A little less. Cut.
Cut there.
That was sick.
The thing that I take away from it the most is how much I've learned about acting from Rob.
These nightmares do exist!
It's been the best training I could possibly ask for in terms of how he approaches performance and what he demands. I feel very protected and safe.
We are here encountering Nosferatu. It's all personal. He works very well with actors. He knows what they need. He's very respectful of what their struggles would be.
I think that's what Robert brings to his movies. They bring such artistic depth.
Your passion is bound to me.
The style of performance that he wants and that he, you know, directs us to create feels really like a look into the past in a way that feels very real, very palpable. He's really the only person that could do this story justice.
You shouldn't see this. This breaks the illusion.
First time that I walked on set and saw him in costume, I was so scared.
You really feel it. You feel the blood coursing through his body.
I thought this is gonna be perfect because I won't have to pretend like I'm scared of him in the scenes.
He's here!
In creating the look of Orlok, it was challenging because he is going to be a dead Transylvanian noblemen, and Bill has a very boyish face. I had done actually a lot of sketches and some digital paintings.
Robert had a very particular vision for Orlok. The references that I got to look at were these sort of occultist warlords during that time in that place.
It's a different look than we've seen of any vampire character.
Doing something that acknowledged the folk vampire and is dressed the way a Transylvanian nobleman would have been dressed.
I don't know why I keep putting myself in these situations where I'm playing a character that's so abstract to me. The voice was the biggest challenge.
And action. He started sending me recordings of what the voice would be, and we went back and forth, and I would give him little notes.
Robert wanted the voice to be as deep, as inhumanly possible.
We also hooked him up with Ausa Junius Dotir, a friend of mine who's an opera singer, to lower his voice an octave.
I would just kind of walk around and practice some Mongolian throat singing to try to stay in that kind of cadence.
We're checking and we're shooting next time, please.
It kind of just comes out of me like a deep, guttural burp.
It was just truly terrifying.
I shall taste of you.
Without the costume and without the prosthetics, you feel very ridiculous trying to perform him. But it was fun exploring it. It's abstract and you dissect the character and try to figure out kind of what the essence of this thing is. But when you put on the makeup the first time and the costume, it was like, okay, well, I don't need to do as much. There's so much power in how static and deliberate his movements are.
This works. The coat looks good in this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
That was,
cool,
the girl,
cool.
she was perfect. Suddenly, he became Orlok, and there was a kind of darkness and heaviness that was different.
I am an appetite, nothing more.
In creating the prosthetics, we were trying to find the line where this person, could have been a human, when he was not a corpse.
David is an incredible designer. When I first saw the prosthetics and what it looked like, just a sculpture on it, the character was alive. It's so scary. It's so unsettling.
David is able to push what I was thinking to the limit.
Robert wanted to have the entire back of Nosferatu's head to be rotten, and also elements around his cheekbones and everywhere else to be rotten. And what he was going to do was he was going to see how far he can get that character towards camera before you realize there's something wrong with him. I presented, say, 4 or 5 sculpts, and he would pick from the different sculpts and create this brand new one. So we had this kind of hybrid with all his favorite things. One of the heads was really mashed up and grim, really grim, but too grim, So he'd say, oh, a little bit of the shoulder on there. And so it's a kind of pick and mix.
Very often in Transylvanian folklore, the vampire is said to have a red face. And so we talked about when the vampire is feeding, how would he be engorged with blood that would color him? When Thomas first opens the coffin, you'll see blood pooling under the flesh.
The back of his head is all dark red and black, and then there's all these veins running across. Teeth, no. Again, that's another thing. Teeth. He didn't want them to be the classic fanged, kind of vampiristic teeth. And he didn't want them too ratty either. We found a way of having something in between, where they're gnarled and they're slightly broken, but they're sharp.
Most of my time is hanging out with the prosthetics people. Head and hands were about 3 hours, and when there's a full body one, 6 hours. I spend so much time in that chair. They're next level, and they're also good people, which is important when you spend that much time with them. Sitting doing vocal warm-ups for 2 hours, it's a weird place to be in for everybody. But they got my back.
7 pieces on his head, and then he's got hands with all individual fingers. The moustache, and it's the hair, and then it's the final touches, and then he's ready to go. It's a serious situation.
And then when you see him start speaking and start acting and start moving towards you in that character, he's really, really scary and really incredible. He's one of the most talented actors of our generation.
As an actor, I'm looking to progress, always. The challenge was all of it. I'm a physical person, and I was like, I don't need to do anything. The prosthetics looks amazing, the costumes look amazing, the camera is framed like a freaking painting. I just have to be there, you know, and do my thing, of course. But when you work with this level of talent on every single department, everything here is at the highest level. It kind of blew my mind.
Nosferatu is dark and dreamlike in a way that I think a lot of horror films are not, in a way that only Robert Eggers could do.
He has an incredible way of building worlds and making them realistic.
Then we can like just react to you guys.
He's incredibly detail-oriented. Nothing is there without a function.
For him, it starts with a mood and maybe some imagery, you know, sometimes years before there's a script.
I have a very strong idea of what I want, you know, and usually to build dread. Good, go again right away. It was a little bit too snowy. Just go again. Jaren and I have been working together since I was 24.
Stop there, a little higher, let's go.
We've sort of grown up together in many ways, both as human beings and fathers and you know, and as collaborators. You know, we think in a very aligned way. Two shot, Simon gets closer.
But Germany in line with the camera here, so this probably goes that way, or maybe the table stays. We got to do different lighting effects with sunrises and sunsets. How bright should the sun be? How blue should the skylight be?
It's really beautiful. It's a really cool shot. Am I far enough out in the window? Yeah, right?
How do you make the sun move? You know, we had a motorized and rotating mirror. I was just saying, move up the 2x3 net. That'll move up the shadow here, right? Yeah, let's try that. The light has to be a certain distance away to emulate the actual size of the source of the sun, you know, mathematically. A lot of R&D going on, lots of just tinkering.
I was interested in a slightly dirtier look for this movie, so we worked with a lot more high-speed lenses and faster film, which was really nice because we could actually shoot with candlelight.
We had a lot of real candlelight scenes. It's all real flame. A lot of mess with candle wax.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm thinking this place is going to go up, but it gave the right tone to the scenes.
There's a scene with the nuns where we had a chandelier we tilt down from, and it's like dripping wax on everybody. It got messy, but it's very satisfying to shoot on film and have real candles. We're able to give it that visual richness on screen.
With Orlok's shadow, there was a lot of expectation that it was going to be CG, and I was like, well, why can't we do it for real?
They had to be crisp. Easiest way to do that is to use a convex mirror, but the problem there is that the convex mirror expands your shadow. Then, you know, the shadow of Orlok gets really big, which is cool sometimes. And other times it's like, no, maybe that shadow shouldn't be this big, you know? Like we're zeroing in on him. We came in, then we go down, then we go straight, then we go down.
Jaren and I do these long setups that go from all these different staged sort of vignettes and compositions.
There's a tension in something when you don't cut as much. You're just a little bit more focused on set and also hopefully the viewer. This is going to be a little slow, Bill, just because we got to keep up with you.
They do a lot of very long, complicated moves, and to accommodate those, there's a few hoops to go over.
Come to me. Come to me.
For instance, Ellen's bedroom in particular, that set is completely designed around a camera move. Camera pulls out from her bed, and it swings around her as she's looking at the curtains and the shadow of Orlok coming towards her. As it continues to swing around, all of the rest of the set swings open out of the way so that we can get back far enough to see her start to levitate. Then you've got the furniture that has to move too, so all the furniture that's attached to the walls so that everything can move out of the way.
It feels fluid, even though it's actually very complicated.
Usually I'll design something and show it to Rob, show it to Jaren, and then they will come up with the camera moves they want, and then I'll figure out how to make the design tear apart and come back together, often in camera.
Craftsmanship is a really good way of describing exactly what Rob and Jaren do, and everyone does in creating these worlds that are almost like paintings.
You really have to know what beats you're hitting, what marks you're hitting, the light, the whole thing. You know, it's very technical in order to accomplish something that ends up being really incredible.
We all have to become a team.
Action!
No one wants to let anyone down, but in order for, to get through to the next beat, it's a dance with the crew. So you've got your camera department also moving around you, and they have their marks, we have our marks. It's such a collaborative thing.
I'll let you go, and then I'll come in, yeah?
These shots are designed, and then you have to bend yourself into accomplishing the shots. But it's challenging. Luckily, the cast have the ability to do the craft of very difficult choreography with the camera.
When you're doing a period movie, and you have, all the actors and all the technicians coming together at the same time to pull off these complex shots, it's incredibly satisfying.
They're not building sets, they're building like a world. There's something very painting-like about it, and something also very authentic to the time period. It feels like a time capsule in every single way.
They just simply don't look like sets. The act of research is something that I truly just, enjoy. Yeah, that's the way to do it, Willem. That's great. Let's tape down that lampshade. It's easier for us to know what we're making because you just look for it and find it. Craig Lathrop, the production designer, he knows what I want. It becomes a conversation about just escalating the vision. It's just how do we make it better and how do we make it work for the story and how do we make it work for the camera.
We pretty much built everything. Did all of Visburg, we did the chapel, Hutter's house, the castle. The room that we're sitting in now, this is Harding's house. There's too many to go through. You don't want me to list 80 sets.
It was emotional for me the first time I saw Visburg because I had the cardboard version of Nosferatu that I did at 17 years old, and now to see this and also the journey that I've gone on with Craig. We built this tiny farm for the witch, which at the time felt like such an achievement, and here we built 5 city blocks. And that was just one of many, many, many builds for this movie, so that was pretty spectacular.
Robert had scouted several Hanseatic League Baltic cities, and although we could find some nice individual buildings, there were no whole streets left.
It has a very romantic, medieval, early modern period architecture.
I scoured through archives, paintings, and every drawing I could find, and looked at photographs from, a little bit later period, but trying to find early photographs that were before the First World War. There's a lot of curves and there's a lot of streets that go onto streets, so you just feel like it keeps going on. These are real cobblestones, all the buildings. They're not plumb, they're not square. It's just to make sure that they look like there's a history and that they've been here for a while. That's not the easiest thing to get a carpenter to do. You keep on telling them to throw away their squares and their levels, but they did a great job, I think.
Once you dress it up with the extras and you get the action going, it comes alive.
The fake dead animals that looked so real, and the people and the prosthetics that were on the people that were dying on the street, everything just felt like I was inside the scariest painting ever made.
When we were doing the work in rural Transylvania, and especially with the Roma community, it was much more difficult because there are a lot less images. We have tons and tons of photographs of this stuff from slightly later, but we have to kind of piece together what could be this earlier version.
I was able to go to a couple of the outdoor historic museums. It was great to actually see these buildings that they had gathered from all over the country and rebuilt them in one spot. So you got to see the details and touch them. We tried to recreate it. We tried to make sure that the details were there, the carvings were there, the feeling was there.
We worked with a Romanian advisor, Florin Lazarescu, and he was completely blown away by Craig's Transylvanian village. And he said it brought back a childhood memory of his that he hadn't had, in 40 years.
I think I've seen every castle in the Czech Republic and Slovenia, and Romania. And we never found, like, the right one. So we built it.
When you stood in the castle hall with the lighting, it looked completely real.
With the great hall and hallways and bedchamber, we wanted it to be like Orlok himself, not just old, but crumbling.
Craig's done such an unbelievable job. It makes it completely believable and easy to lose yourself in the world. The castle's probably my most memorable set because it's the one that I spent the most time in, trying to escape. But the detail of kind of the broken down plaster and the decay, well, I'm blown away by it.
The finishes are so realistic that people aren't going to think that we shot them on builds. They're going to think we went to locations.
The people that built this thing, I'm just very, very, very impressed by them. I don't know how they did it. You can use any angle on this set. You can go and do close-ups on every single detail.
This has some of the coolest props.
If you were to look at the paperwork on the tables, it's all had a calligrapher writing things based on things we found, paintings, furniture, every tiny detail to every large detail was researched and sourced.
You could take a microscope to any of these sets and every single thing is so authentic, so beautiful, so thought out, down to all of these little things that you might not even see in certain shots, but that just add to the feeling that you are inside of something so real.
Orlok's chests that he keeps his Dacian and Roman coins in was a recreation of a medieval chest that Craig found. Orlok's coffin is quite spectacular. It was based on mainly Polish coffins. The real ones have skulls on the side of them, you know, and like how sick is that? Ellen's locket, we found examples of this heart-shaped locket in the design. It is very like grounded and naturalistic.
It's really thrilling to be in that kind of immersive environment. It doesn't take much imagination to be there.
From the very beginning, that was the goal, to try to give life to this world. I don't know how many people will see all the details, but it's all the departments working together to help Rob create this vision.
The costumes are iconic, truly iconic, and so beautiful.
This time period, this style of costume has been a dream of mine to wear and work in forever.
The accuracy of the recreation of all these historical things make the world so authentic.
I've worked with Linda before, and she's great. She works with you to see what's comfortable for you and what you like to do.
We, to some degree, have slightly different tastes, which is what makes the collaboration the best, because Linda can bring out certain ideas that you wouldn't have.
Leave there your conveniences. Set out the deed and sit.
This is Orlok's Hungarian Count costume. This was the first costume that we started with. Robert and I concentrated really between 1540 and 1560-ish.
It was a pleasure to kind of dive into Orlok's costume because there's so many odd things.
There's texture, there's incredible luxury. He has a mente, which is fur-lined and incredibly heavy.
He wears this furry hat that is something that the nobleman would have worn.
The hat, which is called a kolpak, really is to obscure the fact that his skull has major parts of it missing and that he is quite decayed.
I have a hat in this movie. It's huge. It's the biggest hat I've ever seen.
He also wears these strange shoes that are mules with a silk sock and an iron heel that's shaped like a horseshoe. You only kind of get a glimpse of them when he's going up a spiral staircase, but you can hear a slight hint of metallic in the sound design of his footstep.
When Bill put them on, he created this walk that is very otherworldly. He's a Hungarian count.
Please keep safe.
Have you so little faith in me?
I will send you my utmost faith.
Ellen and Thomas were very interesting to design. They tell the lion's share of the story, but they are the poorest of all of the characters. Therefore, they do not have a huge number of costume changes. And the costume changes that they have are there for a reason.
Linda has such, again, great attention to detail within every single look. Like, because Thomas isn't so well off, the fabric that's on the underside of his top hat isn't matching with the fabric on the top, but say Friedrich's would be. So it's kind of little tiny details like that that just make the world completely authentic.
Thomas goes through quite a bit. He's jumping out of a tower, he's being attacked by wolves, he's riding across many counties, and so he didn't have a huge number of costume changes, but he had many versions of the costumes in various states of disrepair that helped to tell the story. For men, it is a period where it predates standardized tailoring. You have examples of shifting seams. So you have this incredible pigeon chest, still a lot of fullness in the head of the sleeve. It doesn't fit the body really tightly. And it's something that actors have to get a little bit used to.
Do you ever feel at times as if you were not a person?
With Ellen, we see modest but beautiful clothing. It's definitely a transition period where women's sleeves go from massive gigot sleeves and they are reduced and they come down the arm. We try to learn as many of the sewing techniques as we can to give the garments the feel that they have in illustrations or that they have in paintings.
As much as I've always loved corsets, I never knew anything about self-tying corsets. And I think it really, does say something about class at the time.
A woman that would not have her own made had a self-tightening corset, rather than a corset that is done up at the back and it is tightened by a chambermaid. The lacing goes all the way around to the front, and then the woman can tighten it herself.
I envy you. I envy you.
For Harding, the look is everything, the line is everything.
I have many costumes, I have many looks, because that's what happens when you're playing a wealthy character.
He would have many top hats. Robert was very particular about the top hats. Fur-lined overcoat, trousers that would be specifically made for a particular outfit. The fabrics that I chose for Harding have the opportunity to show opulence. Luster in the fur that he has in his coats, in the alpaca that he has in his collars, the fur felt in his top hat. Anna has a lot of gold jewelry, diamonds. Her costumes, they have more details. There's more embroidery on them. Fabrics that are very lustrous, fabrics that reflect light, fabrics that are precious. Anna and the two children are so precious to Harding.
Friedrich in public.
Cannot resist you, my love.
With the jewelry, which is all designed, and the boots, which are all designed. It was just a fantastic experience.
They just make you stand differently, move differently, and feel completely of the world.
Every corset, the fact that you can't breathe, the fact that your posture is completely different, and the weight of the dress, it all helps you.
For the viewer, it makes it all the more real, but also for the actors. I can't fully understand the character until I feel like I'm in their skin. It's just incredible.
Maybe split the difference on those rooftops. I didn't see a thing. Everything else looks great.
There are a lot of visual effects, there just are. But what we tried to do was to get them to look like the live photography as much as we could.
I like to use it to enhance and to piece practical things together. Whenever you can use practical effects and use the real thing, it's always going to hit home a little harder.
Redemption!
They want everything in camera wherever possible. You've got Craig's sets, which are phenomenal. He always delivers more practically than I would ever imagine. Obviously, we have the whole of Visburg. The backlot set was incredible and it was huge, but we still had to extend it upwards and in every direction. We shot in Prague and in the Czech Republic, which is, doesn't have much of a seaside. So when we had to go to the shoreline, that was always going to have to be visual effects to help with that. There's 2 canal shots, which we didn't shoot anywhere near water. The only real thing in the shot is the boat with the actors shot on the backlot against a green screen. It's always difficult trying to get the boat and the oars interacting with the water. That takes a lot of time, but it's also putting in all the little details. So the dirt and the sort of scum on the water and just the bits floating in it help give that idea that you're actually in the dirty canal water. And then some of the stunts, I mean, you're not allowed to bite the head off a pigeon apparently, so we had to do that. We had a real pigeon, and then we had replacement pigeon that he actually bit the head off. And then we'd do it in visual effects. And it was that coming together of the practical and the visual effects and the special effects. Just the response you get from the audience is brilliant every time.
We had 2,000 rats, live rats, that were used in the film. A great portion of them were actually trained. In the scene where they come off the shipwreck, those rats were trained on a buzzer to run up off the port. But when we were in the chapel, we made these vacuum-formed rat mats that were covered in furry fake rats and then had the real rats on top of that.
Rats, you know, don't always do what they're told on set, so it was great to have them. We would use them where we could, and even if we ended up replacing them, we'd have a really good reference of how they moved, how it was lit, how they'd respond.
You would have thought that we used CG wolves, but no, those were wolves trained by the Barnesh crew. It was a bit of a challenge because we had to do a separate pass with the wolves chasing a carriage that was motorized, and then a separate pass with the horses in order to not endanger the horses. This is where I say CG is great, because we have real horses, real carriage, real wolves, real mountain slope, but putting them together in the same shot seamlessly.
I'm thinking, right, we're going to need to be doing stuff to every single shot of Orlok. He's going to need all this help. And then we saw the test, and it was like, nothing for us.
Tell me what frame you would like for the beginning.
Out, out, out. 3, 2, 1, action. This looks really bad. This looks like a banana instead of like backlit blood. Let's find the biggest glob. Maybe just thin it out a little bit.
What they were doing practically with the makeup and the prosthetics, it was absolutely phenomenal. The only time that it's really kicked in for visual effects is the very, very end when he dies and he's shrinking a bit and he's bleeding.
I mean, it's extreme in the other shot, but I think if we go too far, it's also just going to become too obvious. It should feel like it could have been done practically.
Adding in more blood, there's already some practical, adding more blood coming out of more orifices, just sort of ramping up all those effects until you get that sweet spot.
I mean, this looks excellent. Okay, cool.
We're here at Air Studios in London, recording the score for Nosferatu.
Robin is actually one of my closest friends, and his obsession with folklore and horror is the most akin to mine. So this Gothic score was really in our wheelhouse. We had a massive string orchestra and a massive choir.
He wanted something that was pretty big and symphonic, you know, kind of leaned into some of the sort of chamber aspects of 19th century music. There's a lot of dread and kind of claustrophobia in the film, and the score is hopefully helping with that as well. Rob's really good at kind of allowing me the freedom to kind of experiment and sort of bring some slightly odd ideas to the table. You know, we're trying to sort of create the sound of a spiral, and there's another sort of string technique that we're trying to sort of recreate what it would feel like to be in a waking nightmare.
Robin's able to push the score and kind of create some interesting musical textures.
It definitely felt important to kind of have a little bit of an edge. So we have a bunch of pipes and horns that are pretty specific to the region and the time period. We have a musician called Letty Stott, and Letty kind of specializes in weird, archaic pipes and horns that generally aren't around anymore.
He would use these things not in the context they would have been used in traditionally, but to create a kind of eerie drone. I absolutely love the score.
I know how much this movie meant for Robert. It doesn't get higher than this in terms of filmmaking. It looks absolutely beautiful, sounds otherworldly.
That's kind of what makes this, you know, one of the films that I'm the most proud of is that attention to detail. And I have to give applause and kudos to my collaborators because of their belief in this film and our collective vision of what it could be.